Right, I asked on Twitter this morning a question about Madeleine McCann, and let's just have a look for, kind of busy. Hundreds of comments already. So it is rumours that Home Office is set to approve another 300k for the Madeleine McCann Operation Grange investigation, approximately 14 million spent so far, excuse me, and no closer to the truth. Let me just take a swig of water. As a researcher and documentary maker of this case, I believe this is a decade-plus long cover-up. Should we give more money to it? I ask people. And the first comment I see is from our lovely Craig Campbell, who knows so much about this case. Excuse me. I also can't be bothered replying to all the Podesta tweets, he says. Let's clear this up. The red shoe photo isn't Jerry McCann. Correct. And the Podestas are not involved in Madeleine's case. Correct. The picture that people use is actually of one man, a computer-generated image and an artist impression of the man the Smith family witnessed. 80% sure it was this man. Now, the Smith family were very clear, particularly Martin Smith, the father of the family, and he believed that as high as 80% that the man he saw carrying a child was Jerry McCann. This is a police statement. You know, we're not making this up. It's not nothing to do with the Podestas. Aussie Princess is exactly, Craig. The Podesta brothers weren't even there at the time. Exactly. Is the money spent covering it up? Asked Rosie. Well, good question. The Muzz says maybe one day someone will come forward with that one piece of info and it will all fall into place. But Muzz, what if we already have that one piece of info? What if it's actually already in the Portuguese police files who said that poor little Madeleine died in that apartment? Hazel says absolutely not to the money. And yes, it is a cover up. Richard D. Hall did an excellent 4-part documentary after going to Portugal. The parents changed their story many, many times. Money spent is to deflect from the truth. And the parents did change their story. Bizarrely, they did. And I've literally never seen any mainstream media journalist who has welcomed them onto their sofas say, why did you repeatedly change your story? Never seen it. Lily says there's more cover-ups than tea leaves. Very suspicious. Jane Brooks says there's no justification to finance an investigation which has gone nowhere for years. Blinkered from the start, parents not allowed to be interviewed. So it was never about finding Madeleine enough. And that's really key here, is that when the investigating officer came out and announced Operation Grange, which I think was they had done an initial inquiry and then they launched a full investigation. So I think that was around 2013/2014. And the investigating officer came out and said neither the friends or the parents are, subject to any form of suspicion. That cannot be the starting point of an investigation into a missing child. How can you possibly rule out the 9 adults who were there? It is a well-known fact, and police will tell you this, that a high percentage of missing children are taken by somebody who was known to the child. So ruling out the 9 adults who were there from the get-go of the investigation was never going to be a good investigation. Colin Sutton, who I've interviewed several times, who has been on Rise with us, and he's in my Madeleine McCann documentaries, a highly respected detective who solved, who was involved in the arrest and charging of Levi Belfield for the murders of Amélie de Lagrange, Millie Dowler. Colin also was the successful investigating detective to do with the Night Stalker. So this is a man who knows his stuff. And he was rumored to be in the picture to be running Operation Grange. And it was reported, I believe, in the News of the World, which no longer exists, but now is the Sun on Sunday. So it really does, just a different name. And he was reported as being in the picture, in the frame, to lead the investigation. And he was contacted by a very senior cop from Scotland Yard, said, don't do it. And Colin said, why not? And the cop said to him, you won't be able to investigate this how you want to. And I asked Colin what that meant. And he said that he interpreted that as you wouldn't be allowed to investigate the parents. Now, I make no claims about Kate and Jerry McCann, but given that they went on holiday with 3 children, came back with 2, and Kate McCann was made an ambassador of missing children, I think these people have a lot of questions to answer. A huge amount of taxpayer money has been spent in 3 countries that we know of, Portugal, Germany, and the UK. And without very little cooperation at all, there's never been an official reconstruction. The adults did a reconstruction for Channel 4 for a TV program, but they haven't done one for the police, which is very curious. And so, you know, it's not okay. Not in my name says need to investigate where every penny is going. Is it going somewhere to keep the truth buried? Well, look, it is very clear that Operation Grange came to be when Theresa May was in the Home Office. David Cameron, who was busy mates with Rebecca Brooks, who was running News International, and Rebecca Brooks put on the front page of the Sun that, you know, we're going to be looking at Theresa May sort of constantly unless they fund this investigation. And some people say to me, but just hypothetically speaking, if the adults were involved, what could they possibly benefit for pushing for an investigation? Well, to be cleared for a start, because they've never been cleared. They've literally never been cleared. If you read the Portuguese police files, it is definitely a sense that the people there are involved. And very recently, to do with the ruling, to do with Gonzalo Amaral, it was made absolutely clear that the reason that there was suspicion around Kate and Jerry McCann is because the police were suspicious of them. And that remains so. So all of this stuff about Christian Bruckner, the German patsy, absolute nonsense. Podesta's absolute nonsense, right? Rebecca says, if I thought it would find her, yes, but I think we all know the chances are slim. Poor, wee girl. BDH11 says, not the same for all missing children. Why is that, I wonder? This has never sat right. James says, it's been almost 16 years. What is so special about this case that we must continually hemorrhage money into it year after year? I don't get it. Well, I think it is a long-term cover-up, James, involving 4 prime ministers. So you have Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, and actually Boris Johnson, and now Rishi Sunak. So that's 6 prime ministers who are implicated in this cover-up. That's very, very serious. And I think what's happened is that each prime minister has inherited the mess from the previous one. Now, if the sitting prime minister then decides to abandon this, that raises questions to all the previous prime ministers, most of them being conservatives, of course. So the sitting prime minister does not want to throw that sort of corruption question spotlight on the conservatives. So they all help each other. It's not necessarily to help the people involved or to help the police. The establishment does what the establishment does, and that is it rallies around to help itself, to protect itself. The most important thing is that the establishment survives. Let's go to the chat, see what you're all saying there. Angry Octopus says, for some reason, Jerry and Kate are being protected. And what's this? I think one of the Tapas crew will break on deathbed, says Zoe Johnson. One of them will speak out, surely, says Trudy. Craig says the British investigation protects the narrative. It does indeed. Let me see if there's any else. Oh, Catherine, what's that? Sorry, Catherine, I was just about to read yours. Sonia, I've been following you for years and you are my go-to on this case. Is that what it said? Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, I don't claim to have all the answers. I really don't. But the evidence itself does not support an abduction. There's literally no evidence to support an abduction. And I think for those who have woken up over the last 3 years, you can clearly see if they would lie about COVID, that being government, authorities, mainstream media. So if they'd lie about COVID, they're capable of lying about pretty much anything, right? Right. So B says, 100% Craig, the British came in like cleaners. The question is, why on this particular case? Was it simply to keep foreign relations as status quo? Or was there a connection between the McCanns and the establishment? Well, we do know, B, that there was a connection. I mean, this was a really unusual situation, right? They were given immediate airtime. Children go missing all the time. It is estimated that one child goes missing every 5 minutes in the UK alone. Many of them are returned and are just temporarily missing, but nonetheless, there are many who never return. So what was it that set Madeleine McCann apart, that within 3 hours of her disappearance, the Daily Telegraph were already reporting on it? Never happens. What was it that set the disappearance of Madeleine McCann apart, that the following morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, Sky News, and it was not Good Morning Britain then, it was the one prior to that, but still a bit British breakfast TV. And they immediately put on a friend of the McCanns live to air. They claim that they immediately knew it was a story. They put this friend of the McCanns live to air. And you know what was really interesting is this particular friend of the McCanns happened to, coincidentally, live in the same street as the brother of Gordon Brown, who was about to be Prime Minister. Yeah, GMTV, well done, Craig, right? So that already is weird. And she apparently had bumped into Gordon Brown's brother at a later stage, said, what can you do? What can you do to help these people? But we also know that Gerry McCann was involved with research that was linked to government prior to the disappearance of Madeleine. Also, don't forget, there are always multiple agendas at work. And 6 months before Madeleine went missing, Tony Blair was at the Forensic Science Lab, which no longer actually exists as such. And the Forensic Science Lab was a department attached to government. And their goal was to ensure that the DNA and fingerprints of everybody in Europe was as part of a database, not if you had been arrested, but everybody. And Tony Blair announced that. He said that he completely supported that. Now, what was interesting, of course, was when Madeleine went missing, Gerry and Kate, they used exactly the sort of government-led terminology. Well, if we had this kind of database, then we could have cross-border cooperation. And then Kate and Gerry McCann, rather than looking for their child, they then went around the European Parliament as really as sort of pseudo-politicians. They both very much wanted to make it in public life. Gerry became part of Hacked Off with Hugh Grant. And what always disgusts me about Hacked Off, apart from the fact that they've always just really primarily protected their own, they never ever protected Brenda Leyland. And she was a perfect example of somebody who had been driven to her death by media, unfair media coverage. And Hacked Off never cared to do anything with poor Brenda, but we do, obviously. And so Kate and Gerry McCann, they wanted very much to become public figures, but what got in their way is the public didn't take to them. There's no amount of money that you can throw at the public if they don't like you. And people just never took to Kate and Gerry McCann. It could have been their personas, which are quite cold and unfeeling. And we have seen Kate force herself to tears. We've seen it. Now, people react to grief in very different ways. And I say grief because I believe Kate and Gerry McCann know what happened to their daughter. And I don't like having to deal with litigation in any way, shape or form, but that's one litigation I would run towards, absolutely run towards, because I think that Kate and Gerry McCann have never been questioned the way that they could be questioned if it involved a legal case. And I'm as good as anybody to do a legal case. And I know absolutely that there are people who listen to this show and then go and report me to Carter Ruck, who are the McCann's libel lawyers. We'll bring it on, frankly, because I'm pretty sure there would be tremendous backing for such a lawsuit. Absolutely, Teresa. Peter Hyatt does a great job on this case. I've said it before, I will say it again. His work with Richard D. Hall on the statement analysis was seminal. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Let me just return to some more of these comments because there are so many of them. I want to get as many as I can. I think generally, the general theme is no, absolutely, we shouldn't. Late to the party says only as an investigation into what may have been dismissed, not pursued or indeed covered up. And some people say it's absolutely ridiculous. And C.A. Scrimshaw, author, says, here comes the annual government Easter egg hunt. Susie says, Gerry McCann wears red shoes. Yes, Susie, but he's not part of that red shoe club. And the thing is that people send me that image. And honestly, I know it looks a little bit like him, but it's really just a white guy with Gerry's similar hairstyle. So a bit racist, they're all white guys that the same, right? Yvonne Ann Bolton says, absolutely not. Would they dream of doing this with some other poor child or some housing estate whose parents aren't so high profile? Of course not. It's an utter disgrace. Joe says, hell no, no more. It's ridiculous. Absolutely not, says Trish. And on it goes. And my family said, this is me, says no, as she died that night. Fairy Godmother has posted a book about cadaver dogs, saying, read this book with stories of many of this successful breed involved too. And of course, we cannot forget the results of the cadaver dogs. The cadaver dogs, they detected not only blood, but cadaver. Cadaver is the scent of death. It was checked to see if anybody had previously died in that apartment, and nobody had. And also, don't forget, Dr. Mark Berlin came on Rise, as he had previously said in a previous documentary, but he came on Rise and he offered a completely free DNA test to determine whose DNA was found in that apartment. And that would give us a fantastic clue as to what may or may not have happened to Madeleine McCann. And so I put him in touch with Scotland Yard. I approached Scotland Yard myself. Have they done anything? No. They want another £300,000 to continue this charade. And that is what it is. Cover up from day one, says Luggerbugs. I still need an answer to the different flight arrangements they all had. Oh, yeah, because some went in from East Midlands Airport. Some went in, I think, from Gatwick. That's because they kind of lived at different parts of the country, Luggerbugs. Or was there something else you're thinking about? Trudy remembers that interview and they ignored him. Knock-on effect to the other case, says Stephanie. And of course, some people often say, what about Ben Needham? Ben Needham disappeared, was it in Greece several decades ago? And obviously not the same level of finances or attention has been given to that case, or indeed any other child. And I do think that there is racism around this case, because many little black children go missing. And I don't see David Beckham or any of these people raising funds for them. I simply don't. And remember all of the people who came out at the beginning raising funds. Right? Not saying these people are racist. I'm saying that they were attracted to Madeleine McCann because she was this cute little girl who had been made into something. That's what happened. And so you had people like Richard Branson, J.K. Rowling, all of these people backing the fund. News of the World put up £1 million. But remember, when Shannon Matthews went missing, I think News of the World put up £30,000 because Shannon Matthews was from a council house and didn't have the same middle class attributes as Madeleine. And it's not Madeleine's fault, her background. This little girl we need answers for this little girl. It's as simple as that. So please watch my documentaries about the McCanns. It is Zoe. It is a boot in the teeth for all the other kids dead or missing. But poor Madeleine, yeah, absolutely. Angry Octopus says they stayed at the MP's villa, the known pedophile. I don't know if they actually stayed there, Octopus. They certainly went to see Clement Freud. Very weird stuff there. Kate even admits it in her book. Clement Freud, who we know many serious allegations of paedophilia when he was alive, highly influential Freud family, another cover-up family right there. And but yeah, Angry Octopus, really inappropriate stuff. Do you remember the conversation? Clement Freud, I'm having to paraphrase, but he said something to Kate. When Madeleine went missing in a deeply Catholic country, Kate suddenly remembered she was Catholic. Lapsed Catholic, but suddenly she remembered, and they went to, Fatima and Clarence Mitchell, their public relations man, had them doing the big religious number. They met the Pope, for goodness sake, right? Extraordinary stuff. But yeah, they went to Clement Freud, and he made this comment to Kate about, what kind of Catholic are you? Are you like the uptight virgin or this or this? And it was just really weird stuff to say to the mother of a missing child. And I would point out to you that what I always say is that the 3rd is the date that Madeleine was reported missing. We don't know she went missing on the 3rd. We don't know that. We literally don't know that. That May the 3rd, 2007 is the official date that she was reported missing. But there is some evidence to suggest that she went missing before that. There is some evidence to suggest that these children were never left alone, and that the idea of them being left alone was simply the only way that an abduction narrative could work. So there's some really weird stuff. There are some pictures that exist of Madeleine that appear to have been taken around that time, which are very concerning to me. And so, yeah, and also don't forget, people have asked me this before, Jerry McCann was a doctor at Celtic football. And obviously, again, I'm not making an association here. I'm just saying that Celtic has become most famous, aside from it obviously being a huge football team, but has become most famous in recent years for the sheer level of child abuse that has taken place there, right? Luggerbugs, yes, one ex-employee reckoned she was missing the day before. I mean, that's the thing, is that, I mean, all you have to do is look at the Portuguese police files, and it becomes really evident that the story that you are told in mainstream media by the likes of Philip Schofield, Holly Willoughby, Kay Burley, any of these people, any of the main channels are all lying to you. They're all lying to you. They are not prepared to look at the abduction narrative because they had their fingers burnt when Kate and Jerry McCann and their friends had those unprecedented legal awards awarded to them. They had a front page apology, and that was it. That completely changed the media narrative about this story. And since that point, a great deal of cowardice. I've been warned off it so many times I've lost count, right? And there is a stench of paedophilia around this case. Yes, Craig, there absolutely is. And I mean, please let us not forget that two doctors who had previously been on holiday with Kate and Jerry McCann, and the Paynes, who were also on the holiday with Kate and Jerry McCann when Madeleine was reported missing. These doctors Gasper, they had reported, the mother had actually reported, she claimed that she had sat in between Jerry McCann and David Payne on a holiday, and a conversation she believed was about Madeleine. And David Payne had made this comment about how she likes it to Jerry McCann as he circled his nipples. And the mother Gasper claimed that that was about Madeleine. This is in police files. This is all, you know, this is all on public record, right? But you do not hear mainstream talking about it. But it didn't just happen once. Gaspers also claimed this happened when they returned from holiday. A couple of weeks later, they were all out at dinner together, and the same scenario occurred. That's it. Katrina Gasper, never reported by MSM. I've talked to Katrina Gasper very briefly, but I talked to her and she was petrified, absolutely petrified, didn't want to discuss it anymore. She'd done what she thought was the right thing. The correct response had not happened. They had been portrayed as the problem, and she just was not prepared to put her head above the parapet anymore. Simple as that, right? So I think it's quite clear that this is a story that has still not been told, right? Yes, Teresa, she did speak about how the fathers bathed all the kids as well, looking in and watching them. And so I don't know about you, I'm a bit funny like that, but I've never had a strange man bathe my daughter when she was a child. Call me weird. The only man who could ever have bathed my child would be her father. And so to have other men bathing your toddlers is really weird, really weird. Yes, that's right. One member enjoyed bathing the kids. Yes, it's weird. I don't care what anybody says, it's weird. Right. On that note, lovely people, I just want to say thank you for joining me. I'm so sorry for all the various issues that we've had this morning, but we proceed, don't we? Absolutely. We proceed as ever. Let me just see if there's any more comments on Twitter that I can pick up. Oh, I'm so sorry. North the Surrey Big Up Bingo Club says, how dare you disrupt the annual Met Police Golf Club Society trip? Indeed. I mean, come on, the Met Police, people have lost faith in them anyway. And this is just a continuation. It's a racket. It's an absolute racket. I cannot support Operation Grange. Cannot. Tracy Gardner says, no, the mother tells us in an Australian interview what happened. I watched expert Peter Hyatt, who works for the police. He breaks down what she says and what it means. In my opinion, cover up, waste of money, and no justice for Madeleine. And so say all of us, Tracy. Right, on all that note, I just want to thank all the risers as ever. Thank you so much, darlings.